March 9th, 1945. Midnight. There is a sound over Tokyo. At first it comes from afar. Then it grows louder. Hundreds of engine noises shatter the night. Japanese air defenses go on alert. But it's too late. 274 B-29 Superfortress bombers are approaching Tokyo at low altitude. And this time, the payload is different. Not explosives. Incendiary bombs. The next 3 hours will witness the greatest fire disaster in human history in a single night. Tokyo's wooden and paper houses ignite each other like dominoes. The wind fans the flames. There is nowhere to escape. By morning, an area of 16 square miles is reduced to ashes. An estimated 80 to 100,000 civilians have lost their lives in a single night. The name of this operation, Operation Meetinghouse, the most controversial and destructive air raid in American military history. So how was this decision made? Why did these bombs fall there that night? And did this operation really shorten the war? Or did it just create timeless suffering? The answers lie both in Washington's files and in Tokyo's ashes. This battle is between two forces. On one side, the United States Air Force, specifically the B-29 Superfortress fleet within the 20th Air Force. On the other side, Imperial Japan, a people and army sworn to defend their country to the end. But this is no ordinary battle. There is no front line, soldier against soldier. This is a strategic air campaign directed at a city, a civilian city. Dates: March 1945 to August 1945. Total duration: 5 months. During this period, Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya, Kobe, and other major Japanese cities were systematically bombed. Location: mainland Japan. Target: to destroy Japan's war industry and civilian morale. Purpose: to force Japan to surrender and thus make the planned ground invasion unnecessary. A small but important note: these bombings took place before the atomic bombs. Tokyo was burning long before Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the losses in Tokyo exceed the combined losses of both atomic bombs. Very few people know this, but this fact is one of the least discussed pages in history: field analysis. To understand Tokyo, you first need to understand what kind of city it is. In 1945, Tokyo was a traditional Japanese city, consisting mainly of wooden and paper structures. The streets were narrow, the houses close together, and there was almost no open space between neighborhoods. It was a completely different texture from the concrete and steel of a modern Western city. This architectural texture did not escape the eyes of American planners. The use of incendiary bombs was designed precisely to target this building texture. The M69 incendiary bomb was developed specifically for Japanese-style buildings. American engineers tested it themselves by burning down Japanese village models they had built in the Nevada desert. The geographical advantage was entirely in the hands of the U.S. With the capture of the Mariana Islands in 1944, the U.S. gained a perfect base for its B-29s. The islands of Saipan, Tinian, and Guam were well within the range of the B-29s to Tokyo. This meant the planes could fly there and back. By early 1945, Japanese air defenses had been seriously weakened. There was no fuel, no experienced pilots, and the radar system was inadequate. Effective defense against B-29s foising at high altitude was nearly impossible. When descending to low altitude, anti-aircraft guns became dangerous, but American commanders were willing to take that risk. In short, geography, logistics, and technology, all three favored the U.S. Japan's only trump card was its determination to resist. Comparison of forces is. The balance of power in this war is indisputable, but the numbers are still striking. On the U.S. side, approximately 1,000 B-29 Superfortress bomber aircraft were deployed in the Pacific. These aircraft were the most advanced bomber platform of the era. Pressurized cabin, long-range, heavy payload capacity. Each could carry 8 tons of bombs. On the Japanese side, by early 1945, the Air Force had been largely decimated. The vast majority of experienced pilots did not return from previous battles. Fuel was so scarce that even training flights were restricted. A significant portion of the remaining aircraft were being held in reserve against a possible invasion of the mainland. The situation was different on the ground. Japan had prepared approximately 2.5 million soldiers and millions of civilian militiamen against an invasion of the mainland. This plan, called Ketsugo, envisaged fighting to the last breath for every Japanese citizen, women, the elderly, and children included. This is where the mystery begins. American commanders knew this. If an amphibious assault was launched on Japan, the losses would be horrific. Estimates were based on the deaths of over 100,000 American soldiers. Some calculations gave even higher figures. So the question arises, were the bombs dropped to prevent the invasion? Or was Japan already on the verge of surrender, and the bombs merely accelerated the processes? This question still awaits an answer today, and historians are still debating it. Preparation phase and command structure. The architect of this operation was General Curtis LeMay, commander of the 20th Air Force. He was a tough, calculating, results-oriented soldier. When LeMay took command, daytime bombing from high altitudes was not producing the desired results. Clouds obscured targets, wind deflected bombs, and accuracy suffered. Industrial targets remained largely intact. LeMay made a tactical revolution. He lowered the aircraft to low altitudes, between 1,500 and 3,000 meters. He switched to night operations. He used incendiary bombs instead of explosive bombs, and he removed defensive weapons from the planes to reduce weight and carry more bombs. This decision sparked a major debate among pilots. Low altitude meant vulnerability to anti-aircraft guns, but LeMay had done his calculations and insisted. On the Washington front, General Henry Hap Arnold, Chief of Staff, was coordinating the overall Pacific campaign. The High Command wanted results, and LeMay delivered them. On the Japanese side, defense coordination was being carried out by the Koiso and then Suzuki governments. Emperor Hirohito, in keeping with his traditional role, did not take direct command, but discussions within the palace were intensifying. Should they surrender or resist to the end? This internal conflict between the Army and Navy factions slowed Japan's response, and this delay meant that more cities burned with each passing night. Chronology of the war. November 1944. Initial attempts. The first B-29 raids on Tokyo from the Mariana Islands begin. High-altitude daytime explosive bombs. The results are disappointing. Due to cloud cover and strong winds, accurate strikes on targets are impossible. The Japanese war industry remains largely intact. LeMay decides to change tactics. March 9th to 10th, 1945. Operation Meetinghouse. The most devastating night in history. 274 B-29s arrive over Tokyo after midnight. Low altitude, incendiary bombs. A windy night. 1,600 tons of M69 incendiary bombs are dropped on the city's densest wooden neighborhoods. Fire combines with wind to create a massive firestorm. Escape routes are cut off. Even rivers boil. By morning, a 16-mile area is reduced to ash. An estimated 80 to 100,000 people are killed in a single night. March to May 1945. Systematic destruction. LeMay systematizes the campaign. After Tokyo, Nagoya, Osaka, and Kobe are targeted. Throughout April and May, the industrial zones and residential areas of major Japanese cities are bombed in rotation. Over 60% of Japan's major cities suffer extensive damage or are completely destroyed during this period. June to July 1945. Transition to smaller cities. With no major cities left to target, the B-29s turn to smaller cities. Cities with populations of 50 to 100,000 are targeted. Japan's industrial capacity is now largely crippled, but the decision to surrender still does not come. August 6, 1945. Hiroshima. Image, archival photo of the Hiroshima mushroom cloud. The Enola Gay drops the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima. The city center is instantly destroyed. An estimated 70,000 people are killed in the initial blast. Japan remains silent. August 9th, 1945, Nagasaki and the Soviet attack. The second atomic bomb falls on Nagasaki. On the same day, the Soviet Union declares war on Japan and enters Manchuria. This pressure from two fronts ends the debates within the palace. August 15, 1945. The emperor speaks as Emperor Hirohito addresses the nation on the radio. Japan surrenders. Most Japanese citizens hear the emperor's voice for the first time today. What he says is something they are not accustomed to. The war is over. Strategic and psychological impacts these facts. The strategic impact of the Tokyo bombings is indisputable. Japan's war production capacity collapsed significantly. The production of equipment necessary for the Navy and Army virtually ceased. This meant that, militarily speaking, the war was effectively won. But let's pause here and ask the question, what would have happened if these bombings had not taken place? The planned land invasion, Operation Downfall, was to begin in the fall of 1945. According to American commanders' own estimates, this invasion would have meant between 100,000 and 1 million American military casualties. Japanese casualties would have been much higher. All of Japan would have become a battlefield. From this perspective, it can be said that the bombings saved millions of lives by making the invasion unnecessary. This is precisely the defense of the American commanders. However, looking at it from another angle, the vast majority of those who lost their lives were civilians, women, the elderly, children. They were not the ones who decided to go to war. This fact makes that decision morally controversial, and it is still debated today. The psychological impact was profound for both sides. In the American public, there was a sense of triumph and relief. The war was over, and American children were coming home. In Japanese society, however, these bombings sowed the seeds of a trauma that would last for generations. The peace constitution, the anti-nuclear movement, and much of Japan's subsequent decades were fueled by this trauma. And it should also be noted that these events are still interpreted differently by American and Japanese historians today. History is not always written from the perspective of the victor. Sometimes it is written with the silence of those who lived through it. The Tokyo bombings remain one of the most controversial chapters in the history of warfare. On one hand, there is this fact. This operation shortened World War II. It crippled Japan's war capacity, and it prevented land battles that would have involved millions of people. It was a success in terms of strategic objectives. On the other hand, there is this reality. The vast majority of those who lost their lives were civilians. They did not start this war. And what happened pushed the boundaries of what was considered acceptable, even under the laws of war at that time. This page of history teaches us this. Winning a war and doing what is right are not always the same thing, and big decisions have big consequences, both for the target and for the conscience of the decision maker. General LeMay said years later, "If we had lost the war, I would have been tried as a war criminal." This sentence is one of the most honest statements ever made about the ethics of war. Today, Tokyo is one of the world's largest cities. Crowded, modern, dynamic. The traces of those nights are no longer visible on the stones, but they remain in our memories. And as we watch this video, remembering the people who lived through those nights there, not just the numbers, but the people, is perhaps the most honest tribute we can pay to history. In our next video, we return to Europe. 1944, the border between Belgium and Luxembourg, the freezing cold of December, and Germany's last major offensive, a move no one expected. Bastogne, a town, and the German troops surrounding it. Inside, an American general who responded to the order to surrender with a single sentence. That single sentence went down in history. In the next video, we'll read that sentence together.